Josh Larky, welcome to Week 1 NFL action, folks. I've got some starts and sits for you at each position. Let's get right into it. At quarterback, we're going to be starting Caleb Williams this week against the Titans. He's Fantasy Pros consensus quarterback 14. Now, the Titans did add cornerback L'Jarius Sneed this offseason, but it might take a few weeks for this Tennessee secondary to really start to gel. Now, fantasy managers, they're worried. Oh, it's Caleb Williams. He's a rookie. His first NFL game. Well, the betting markets are not worried. His team, the Bears, have the 8th highest implied team total in the betting markets. It reflects that he's a super talented first overall pick with a great supporting cast, which is rare for a first overall pick. He's got 3 premier receivers, DeAndre Swift in the backfield, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett at tight end, a competent offensive line. We are going to sit Dak Prescott this week at Cleveland, Fantasy Pros consensus quarterback 15. I think the Browns defensive front's just going to overwhelm this Dallas offensive line, which isn't quite as strong as years past. Lamb is really the only marquee talent on offense to throw to. Brandon Cooks, Jake Ferguson, these are below average 2-3s for an NFL team. The running back room has nothing to scare the Browns defense either. It's like the Dynasty rosters from 5 years ago. It's like Ezekiel Elliott. We might see Dalvin Cook. Oh, and there's Rico Dowdle. He's the starter. So people they're tempted out there. They're like, oh, I drafted Dak as my quarterback 8. I just had to start him. I took him as the 8th quarterback off the board. That's great. He's like my quarterback 20 this week. What are we doing, people? It's like the 5th lowest team total in the betting markets for week 1. Everyone out there is just telling you, stay away from Dak this week. Running back, I'm going to be starting Javonte Williams at Seattle, Fantasy Pros consensus running back 24. Year after year, Seattle allows running back dump-offs. Audric Estime and Blake Watson are rookies. Jaleel McLaughlin rarely saw snap shares above 20% last year. I think Javonte could eat into the Piran workload from last year a little bit as well, now that he's another year removed from the ACL injury. It's also Bo Nix's first NFL game. Sean Payton's likely to dial up a healthy dose of the running backs to take pressure off Nix. And now we're going to sit Ramondre Stevenson at the Bengals. Fantasy Pros consensus running back 22. We're going to sit the 8.5-point underdog starting running back. They've got the lowest implied team total, just 16 points. Just 16 points. The Vegas bettors do not like the Patriots. I don't like the Patriots either. Antonio Gibson's not a between the tackles runner. He's probably going to be involved in the passing game. I just don't know what we're missing out on by sitting Ramondre Stevenson this week. And now we've got start Tank Dell. Wide receiver 32, consensus rankings this week. We're going to start him at the Colts. He's ranked as if he's the wide receiver 3 for Houston. I'm just not quite sure if he is. Even if he is, that's fine. The Texans have the 4th highest implied team total. This Colts secondary is a huge liability. Dell could get fantasy managers there on one play. Just a high game total in general. There's going to be a lot of plays. There's going to be a lot of offense, a lot of scoring. There's just a lot of names above Dell this week where I would just start him over them. And then we can just sit Calvin Ridley. He's the consensus wide receiver 35 this week. He's at the Bears. The Bears defense should be really good this year. Ridley's never played with Will Levis before. DeAndre Hopkins has. DeAndre Hopkins will be playing week 1. I think Ridley's the team's wide receiver 2 this week. He's ranked well above Hopkins. I just think in general, Hopkins looked better than Ridley for most of last year. I think Ridley's got a really low floor this week. And now my priority start, you're already starting him, but I just want to plant the flag as this is my guy this week, my guy this year, Dalton Kincaid. He's the consensus tight end 4 this week. But I mean, okay, let's unpack this. The Bills have the highest implied team total of the week. The Cardinals have maybe the worst linebacking group in the NFL. Curtis Samuel's a little banged up. Khalil Shakir might not be a full-time player. It's Keon Coleman's first NFL game. Dalton Kincaid just looks like the fantasy tight end 1 for this week. And then we can just put him right back on the bench. Brock Bowers, consensus tight end 12 by Fantasy Pros rankings. He's at the Chargers. The Chargers have a terrible linebacker group, yes, but the Raiders have the 3rd lowest projected team total. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, there's some real target competition there. I don't know what the split looks like yet between Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers. I don't really see the risk in sitting Brock Bowers. If you really want a play that's way below tight end 12, just go with Luke Musgrave at tight end 20 against a questionable Eagles linebacker unit. I looked at Underdog Fantasy Pick'ems. They've got Brock Bowers at 32.5 receiving yards high-low and 6.45 fantasy points high-low. Not very convincing.